Shall we start? We reached page 158. And we came down to line 277. But before that, higher up the page at line 257, Sri Aurobindo tells us, then man was molded from the original brute. A thinking mind has come to lift life's mood. And this thinking mind is a keen-edged tool, a sharp tool of a nature which is still mixed and vague. This mind is an intelligence which is a mixture, half witness, half machine. So half a conscious watcher and half just mechanical action. So this beginning of human consciousness and Sri Aurobindo says that the power, the creative power, is amazed when she becomes conscious or begins to become conscious in human beings. She's amazed at the works wrought in her mystic sleep, when she was in this trance of matter, this half trance of life. All kinds of things have been going on. Evolution has been going on. The animal creation has come. Now even the human creation has come. So the creative power, the Supreme Mother, she looks on the world that she's made. And she begins to wonder. She's not only amazed, she wonders. And she pauses in her creative process to understand herself and her aim. What is she doing? Pondering by thinking. She learned to act by conscious rule. It's a thing that human beings start to do, to set conscious rules for themselves. It'll be better if I do it like this. A visioned measure guided her rhythmic steps, the rhythmic steps of the creative life movement. Thought bordered her instincts with a frame of will and lit with the idea her blinded urge. That urge of life is not very far-sighted. But now there's the idea of a framework of will dictated by thought. So that's where we stopped last time, I think. I'll read on from there. On her mass of impulses, her reflex acts, on the inconscience pushed or guided drift and mystery of unthinking accurate steps, she stuck the specious image of a self, a living idol of disfigured spirit. On matter's acts, she imposed a patterned law. She made a thinking body from chemic cells and molded a being out of a driven force. To be what she was not inflamed her hope. She turned her dream towards some high unknown. A breath was felt below of one supreme. An opening looked up to spheres above, and colored shadows limned on mortal ground the passing figures of immortal things. A quick celestial flash could sometimes come. The illumined soul ray fell on heart and flesh and touched with semblances of ideal light the stuff of which our earthly dreams are made. A fragile human love that could not last. Ego's moth wings to lift the seraph soul appeared. A surface glamour of brief date, extinguished by a scanty breath of time. Joy that forgot mortality for a while came, a rare visitor who left betimes and made all things seem beautiful for an hour. Hopes that soon fade to drab realities, and passions that crumble to ashes while they blaze, kindled the common earth with their brief flame. A creature insignificant and small, visited, uplifted by an unknown power. Man labored on his little patch of earth for means to last, to enjoy, to suffer and die. A spirit that perished not with the body and breath was there like a shadow of the unmanifest, and stood behind the little personal form, but claimed not yet this earthly embodiment. You'll start, Martin, line 278, on her mass of impulses.
On her mass of impulses, her reflex acts, on the unconscious pushed or guided drift, as mystery of unthinking, accurate steps, she stuck the specious image of herself, a living idol of disfigured spirits. On matter's acts she imposed the pattern law. She made a thinking body from chemic cells and molded a being out of a driven force.
So this is the beginning of the next step in the development of things. No? The coming in of thought to influence the blinded urge of life, of the life movements. Those movements of life are a mass of impulses, kind of chaos of many different impulses, and reflex acts acts that just happen. You know, when you go to the doctor and he bangs you can't do anything about it. It's just a reflex. It happens by itself. No? So many of the acts of the life force were like that. But on that mass of impulses and those reflex actions, and on the drift of the inconscient, it's automatic movement, which is partly pushed and partly guided, it's mystery, the mystery of the inconscious, unthinking, but very accurate steps. The creative power, it's as if she puts a mask on it, on all those things. She stuck the specious image of a self, a conscious being, no? It isn't really that yet. Something that is specious is misleading. But she gives that appearance to all those acts, unconscious, instinctive, reflex behaviors. She gives the appearance that there's a conscious being there, a self. A living idol of disfigured spirit. An idol is a representation of something divine. It's not the divine thing itself, no? And this is a living idol, but the spirit which it's representing is disfigured by this representation. And this creative power is imposing a law, a patterned law. A pattern maybe in the sense of something that can be repeated, no? on the acts of matter acting, behaving. For living beings, she made a thinking body. Now that thought has come in, the body is not only alive, it can think to a certain extent, even though it's only made from these chemic cells. These cells, the cells that are made up of chemicals. She molded a being out of a driven force. To start with, the inconscient was driven or pushed, perhaps a bit guided. Now she's beginning to mold something like conscious being. We can see this perhaps in some animals, if they come close to human beings. It's not that they are used to thinking, but they're not purely instinctive. They develop some kind of conscious reactions.
Shraddhavan, I don't understand this line. She made a thinking body from chemic cells.
Chemic cells. So that's what we've got. We have a thinking body, no?
Yeah, I know.
And it's made out of cells which are made up of chemicals, of chromosomes and DNA and this and that. No? Out of that, we could say, chemical living stuff, she makes a body, a form, that has some capacity of thought consciousness. And what is being described here is just the very beginning of that process. Now we have, we human beings have evolved further, and it's remarkable how conscious these chemic cells, this body that's made up of chemic cells, how conscious it can be, what capacities of thought it has, no? At a later stage. No?
But I don't understand really the relation thinking and chemical cells.
Well, he's making a contrast. How is it that these chemic cells can think? How can it happen?
Yes, thank you.
Bhavan.
To be warm she was known, inflamed her health. She turned her dream towards some high unknown. A breath was felt below of one supreme.
So there's some aspiration now in this creative life power. No? She wants to become more than she is, to be what she was not yet. No? Inflamed her hope. There's some flame is coming to give force and strength to that aspiration. And she's turning her dream towards some high unknown, something beyond these thinking bodies. And because of that aspiration, there's a response. A breath was felt below, here. A breath that's coming from the One Supreme. And together with that breath, there's an opening phenomena. Will you read?
An opening looked up to spells above, and colored shadows
Limbed.
on water ground. The passing figures of immortal things. A quick celestial flash would sometimes come. The illumined soul will from on her heart and flesh, and touched with semblances of ideal light, the stuff of which our earthly dreams are made.
It's as if something is coming into the earthly bodies made of chemic cells from higher levels. A breath was felt here below of something supreme. And there's an opening looking up to higher levels. And through that opening, it's as if colored shadows fall or get outlined on mortal ground, on bodies that are subject to death. What they do is they outline passing figures of things that really are immortal. There's something about these lines that reminds us of the Greek philosopher Plato. He believed, he was quite sure that all the things that we see in our world, they're just colored shadows of things that are much, much more real. So he said, we people, we are like people sitting with our backs to the door of a cave. There's some light coming through the door of the cave, but we are not looking at the light. We're looking at the back of the cave. And there we see the shadows, the colored shadows. Those shadows, they come and they go, but they're actually shadows which represent things that are eternal, that are immortal. He called those things typal things, or ideal things, things that are immortal. And we see just shadows of them here. And then, not only these passing figures, sometimes a flash of light, like a flash of lightning, a quick celestial flash could sometimes come. And that illumined soul ray falls on our heart and our flesh and lights it up, touches it with semblances of ideal light, those things from outside the cave. It touches with semblances of ideal light the stuff of which our earthly dreams are made. And he's going to give some very beautiful examples of those semblances of ideal light. Janaka, would you read?
A fragile human love that could not last. Ego's most means to lift the self-soul appear a surface glamour of brief date, extinguished by a scanty breath of time. Joy that forgot mortality for a while came, a rare visitor who left to be kind and made all things seem beautiful for an hour. Hopes that soon fade to drab realities and patience that crumble to ashes. Ashes while they blaze, kindled the common earth with the brief flame.
Beautiful images, no? So touching with semblances of ideal light, the stuff of which our earthly dreams are made. And one example is human love. It's so fragile, can't last. That human love, he says, it's like the wings of a moth, a night butterfly. They are not very, very strong usually. He says these are the wings of the ego, but they are meant to lift up our divine soul, our seraph soul, our soul which is a messenger to us from the divine. So that fragile human love appears in evolution. It's a surface glamour. It doesn't go very deep and it doesn't last very long. It's extinguished like a flame, a candle flame being blown out. Only a small breath of time is enough to blow out that little flame. But it has come. That human love has come. It's the beginning of something. And then another thing that comes is joy. A kind of joy which makes us forget for a while that we must die, that we are mortal. It comes, that joy. It doesn't come very often. It's a rare visitor. And when it comes, it leaves betimes, soon. It soon leaves. But while it's there, it makes everything seem beautiful for a while, for an hour. So love, joy, hope. It's one of the things that lifts us up. But those hopes, especially in these earlier stages of our development, our hopes soon fade away to drab realities. Hopes bring light and joy and all good things, but they soon fade away to the way things normally are, drab. We have a passage of the mother's explanations, part of Savitri, and she says, something comes from above and it makes everything seem miraculous for a little while, but then everything fades back. It becomes dull. ordinary, she says. So it's like that, drab realities. And then there are passions, intense feelings. They burn up in us like a bonfire, but they also don't last because they crumble to ashes while they blaze. But these new emotions, they hadn't been there before. Now they come, no? They kindle, they light up our common earth, our dull, ordinary matter, with their brief flame. It's a new development. You like to read?
A creature insignificant and small, visited or plagued by an unknown power, man labored on his little bed of earth for means to last, to enjoy, to suffer and live.
Yes. So this is man. Human beings. We are insignificant, small things in comparison with the whole universe and all the vast movements of the other planes, no? But here we are, we human beings. We are insignificant and small, but we do get visited by an unknown power. Something new and divine comes and lifts us up. And we human beings, we have to work hard. Man labored. Each of us is given a little patch of earth where we have to do our work. Other animals, of course, they have to find their food somehow. They have to hunt or be hunted or escape from their hunters. But there isn't that sense of effort, of labor. That's a human feeling. And we have the feeling that we have to work, otherwise we can't survive. No? We have to. Just to survive or means to last, we have to work. If we want enjoyment, we have to work for it. Even to suffer and to die, we have to work for that too. Joel.
A spirit that perished not with the body and breath was there like a shadow of the unmanifest, and stood behind the little personal form, but claimed not yet this earthly embodiment.
This is a very, very interesting sentence, I find. It's talking about how the creative power has made the bodies, and there's a spirit above, and so on. Here he says that there's a spirit that doesn't perish when the body perishes, when the breath perishes. There's an immortal spirit there. It's there like a shadow of what's not yet manifested. It's standing behind this little personal form, the little human form. But at this stage of evolution, which he's describing, that immortal spirit hasn't yet claimed the body. Claimed not yet this earthly embodiment. So it's as if the spirit is hovering round the physical being, guiding it maybe, protecting it, helping it to grow, but it's not yet moved in and to inhabit the body. It's not yet become the soul of the form.
Shraddhavan,
Yes.
de synthesis Gnosis of Yoga number 2, the Gnosis of Vijnana. Auroville describes the body. He tells the body is in soul.
His what?
The body.
Is.
His body is in soul.
Is in the soul, yes.
It's very, 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 very nice.
Yes. That's what it says, no? It's standing there behind. Maybe it's protecting the body, but it's not yet in it. Who is next?
Ascending to nature's long, slow moving tone, watching the works of his own ignorance, unknown, unfelt, the mighty wisdom lives, and nothing slows the glory that is here. A wisdom governing the mystic world, a silence discerning to the cry of life. It sees the hurrying crowd of moments streaming towards a still greatness of distant power.
Beautiful. So that spirit is there. The powerful witness, the witness soul, the essence of the being. It's assenting, it's agreeing to the way that nature is working, nature's long, slow-moving toil. And that witness, self, watches the works that its own ignorance is doing. He's unknown, he's unfelt. He lives surrounding us or in us or behind us. But he's unknown and he's unfelt, and nothing shows the glory that is here. But what he is really, this witness, he is a wisdom governing this mystic world, a silence, listening to the cry of life. The witness sees the hurrying crowd of moments, all the many, many moments of life, but they are streaming, they are all streaming in one direction, towards the still greatness of a distant hour, some distant time, a silent time full of great power. All our moments, our many, many little moments, are all leading towards the still greatness of a distant hour. They still have a long way to go, but that's the hour that everything is moving towards. That's the main thing that's happening in our world. Just this morning, in some other work, I read this sentence, that this movement, this ongoing movement towards a great fulfillment, that's the most significant thing that's happening on earth. That's the meaning of our existence here in this material world.
Is there any connection with the hour of God?
I'm not quite sure what the hour of God is. And you know, they asked Mother to read this passage, And somewhere she's commented, I don't know why they asked me to read this passage. Seems a very gloomy passage to me. She said something like that. But it must be a time of great change. That's what the text seems to say. No? But I think this is the hour, the still greatness of a distant hour. It's the hour of fulfillment. So we have finished that section, second section, is it? And now we can start the third one. Leila, would you read?
This world unintelligibly turns in the shadow of a new conscience. It hides a key to inner meanings mist. It locks in our hearts a voice we cannot hear.
Go on.
An enigmatic labor of the spirit, an exact machine of which none knows the use, an art, an ingenuity without sense. This minute, elaborate, orchestrated life forever plays its motiveless symphonies.
This huge world, it's not just our earth. This is the whole material universe. It's turning, turning, unintelligibly. We don't know how or why. We can't understand. It's turning in the shadow of a mused inconscience, an inconscient trance-like state. But we can't help feeling, and Sri Aurobindo assures us again and again, that this huge world, unintelligible world, is hiding a key to inner meanings which we are missing. It's turned in the lock, it's locking inside our hearts a voice. We can't hear it. We would have to open the key in order to be able to hear the voice. No? This huge world seems to be an enigmatic labor of the Spirit. The Spirit is exerting so much energy. Why? It's an enigma, a mystery, a riddle. It seems to be a very exact machine. Everything in this clockwork is working, but none of us knows why. What's the use of it? It's so much skill, so much ingenuity. It seems to have no meaning. This orchestrated life, it's been so carefully organized, minute, in every small detail, elaborate, no? It just goes on playing its motiveless symphonies, like a kind of musical box. What is the meaning of this symphonies? It's a mystery to us. Sarojini.
Mind learns and knows not, turning its back to truth. It studies surface laws by surface earth. Life states, surveys, and nature's process sees, not seeing for what she asked or why we live.
Let's pause there. The mind learns. Mind does learn. But it doesn't somehow know. It doesn't understand what it's learned. It seems to turn its back to truth. It studies the surface laws of matter, no? And it uses a surface thought. It can't go deeply into things. It surveys, it has a look at the steps which life is taking. It sees the processes of nature, but it doesn't see why. Why is she acting like that? Why are we here, alive? Dhanalakshmi.
It marks her tireless care of just device, her patient intricacy of fine detail, the ingenious spirit's brave, inventive plan in the great, futile mass of endless works, adds purposeful figures to her purposeless sum. Its garbled stories piles, its climbing roofs on the floors carved foundations she has laid. Imagine the citadels reared in mythic yard, or monks they stand of Greek linguistic moon. Transient creations form and hit the sky. The world conjectures scheme is labored out on the dim floor of mind's incertitude, or painfully built a fragmented whole.
Yes. So this is what the mind can do. Where did we stop? Yes. So the mind marks, it does notice some of what nature does, her tireless care of just device. Actually, we seem to be discovering more and more of that, and in what an amazingly detailed way nature works. No? So fascinating. So the mind notices that, her patient intricacy of fine detail. It notices the ingenious spirit's brave, inventive plan, always inventing new, wonderful things. The mind sees all this, but it sees all this in nature's great futile mass of endless works, more and more things, adds purposeful figures to her purposeless sum. Nature doesn't seem to have a purpose. She just goes on doing things. Mind tries to analyze purpose and why is this happening. But it also just goes on piling more and more things. It's gabled stories, piles. A story is a level in a building. So some stories have 111, some buildings have 111 stories, some have only 1 or 2. And if you're putting a roof on a building, you may make a gable, a flat front to that pointed slope of the roofs. No? So at one time architecture, it was very fashionable to have many gables.
You means the triangle one and
on top of the straight walls, the sloped roof starts. So then you have a flat surface. Maybe there's a room inside that slope, and there might be a window looking out. No? And then maybe at the side there's another gable going off in another direction, and another one going off in another direction. No? So in that way the building becomes more and more elaborate, one level on top of another.
Here it is used as a verb.
It's gable, piles is the verb. We pile stories upon stories, gables upon gables. It's climbing roofs, also get piled up. It's all based on the close carved foundations that nature has laid. She's given the basis. And Sri Aurobindo says all these things, all these constructions, these buildings that the mind makes, that they're imagined citadels. A citadel is a kind of fortress, a place where you can be protected. But these are just imagined citadels. And they're reared in mythic air. Even the air doesn't really exist. All their structures mount a stair of dreams, all the way up to a moon, which is actually out of reach. Where did we stop?
347, transient creations.
Transient creations. So these are these buildings of the mind, imagined citadels. They point, they reach even to the sky. A world conjecture scheme is labored out. The mind works out a whole idea of how the universe might be working, but it's just a conjecture, it's a hypothesis, a suggestion. And it is based on this dim flaw of mind's incertitude. The basis is not sure. You work out this elaborate conjecture, it might be this, but if your basis is not sure, the whole thing can come tumbling down. The mind painfully builds some kind of whole, but it's a whole made up of many fragments. That's where we stopped. I think we'll pause there. For today. Because here a new idea starts. On her mass of impulses, her reflex acts, on the inconscience pushed or guided drift and mystery of unthinking, accurate steps, she stuck the specious image of a self, a living idol of disfigured spirit. On matter's acts she imposed a patterned law. She made a thinking body from chemic cells and moulded a being out of a driven force. To be what she was not inflamed her hope. She turned her dream toward some high unknown. A breath was felt below of one supreme. An opening looked up to spheres above, and coloured shadows limned on mortal ground the passing figures of immortal things. A quick celestial flash could sometimes come. The illumined soul ray fell on heart and flesh, and touched with semblances of ideal light, the stuff of which our earthly dreams are made. A fragile human love that could not last, ego's moth wings to lift the seraph soul, appeared, a surface glamour of brief date, extinguished by a scanty breath of time. Joy that forgot mortality for a while came, a rare visitor who left betimes and made all things seem beautiful for an hour. Hopes that soon fade to drab realities, and passions that crumble to ashes while they blaze, kindled the common earth with their brief flame. A creature insignificant and small, visited, uplifted by an unknown power, man laboured on his little patch of earth for means to last, to enjoy, to suffer and die. A spirit that perished not with the body and breath was there, like a shadow of the unmanifest, and stood behind the little personal form, but claimed not yet this earthly embodiment. Assenting to nature's long, slow-moving toil, watching the works of his own ignorance, unknown, unfelt, the mighty witness lives, and nothing shows the glory that is here. A wisdom governing the mystic world, a silence listening to the cry of life. It sees the hurrying crowd of moments stream towards the still greatness of a distant hour. This huge world unintelligibly turns in the shadow of a mused inconscience. It hides a key to inner meanings missed. It locks in our hearts a voice we cannot hear. An enigmatic labour of the spirit, an exact machine of which none knows the use, an art and ingenuity without sense, this minute elaborate, orchestrated life forever plays its motiveless symphonies. The mind learns and knows not, turning its back to truth. It studies surface laws by surface thought, life's steps surveys, and nature's process sees, not seeing for what she acts or why we live. It marks her tireless care of just device, her patient intricacy of fine detail, the ingenious spirit's brave inventive plan in her great futile mass of endless works, adds purposeful figures to her purposeless sum. Its gabled stories piles, its climbing roofs on the close carved foundations she has laid. Imagined citadels reared in mythic air, or mounts a stair of dream to a mystic moon. Transient creations point and hit the sky. A world conjecture's scheme is laboured out on the dim floor of mind's incertitude, or painfully built a fragmentary whole.